I just want to welcome everyone to this this session on equity, focus, dashboards, and more. And we're welcoming the Moraine Valley Research Department. So go for it.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for choosing to attend our session. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sadia Khan. I'm the Director of Institutional Research and Planning at Moraine Valley Community College. I'd like for my wonderful colleagues to take a minute and introduce themselves.
And I'm Aaron Rowe. I'm the Assistant Director for Research and Planning.
And I'm Dan Gages. I'm the Senior Research Analyst.
So again, thank you for attending our session, Equity, Focus, Dashboards, and More. The and more part is what I'll be focusing on a little bit at the beginning of our session, and then the majority of the session will be focused on a demo of our Tableau dashboards that have been designed to support the equity work that our college has undertaken. I'm sure many of you who are tuning in are in similar situations at your institutions. Either you are engaging in this work or are thinking about engaging in this work. So hopefully what we share today will be useful to all of you. A little bit about our institution. For those of you who don't know much about us, we're located in Palos Hills, Illinois. Our annual credit enrollment for FY20 was a little over 21,000 students. The most popular majors at Moraine Valley include liberal arts transfer, science transfer, and criminal justice. As of this past fall, our student population breakout was 50% white, 24% Hispanic, and 9% African American. 63% of our student body was part-time, 54% was female, and the average age of our credit students was 23. The next couple of slides, I want to talk a little bit about our college's commitment to these principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. As I'm sure many other institutions are undertaking similar steps and are on this journey, just to give a little background. So diversity, equity, and inclusion are core values of our institution, along with the others you see on the screen. Diversity has been a value for many, many years. In 2018, when we went through our most recent strategic planning process, we added inclusion and equity to those values. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is also one of the 5 strategic priorities at our institution. So I know every institution does it a little bit differently. At our institution, we have sort of these 5 overarching priorities and then strategic goals under those priorities, and that guides the direction of our institution for the next 5 years. And so one of our strategic priorities is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Another way we've demonstrated our commitment to these principles is that we're a part of the Illinois Equity and Attainment Initiative, or ILEA, since 2018. And I'm guessing many institutions that are tuning in are also maybe a part of this initiative. And it's something put together by the Partnership for College Completion. And 4 years and 2-year institutions can be asked to be a part of this initiative. But essentially, each institution that's a part of this submits an equity plan and at a very high level commit to improving completion rates and persistence rates for their Black students, Latino, Latina students, and low-income students. So at a very high level, that's what the plan is aiming to do. And then each institution, as a part of their plan, submits the specific efforts that they will work on to advance that, to meet that goal. So some of the things our institution has included in our plan are employee training, mentoring, doing various policy reviews, book vouchers, advisor case management, data reviews. These are all some of the things that we've highlighted in our plan. Another thing we've done as an institution is engaged in a lot of campus conversations about these issues. As I mentioned, we joined this initiative in 2018, and since then, there's been many conversations engaging the entire campus at an in-service, various focus groups. We've included students and just had conversations about some of this work. For example, one afternoon was spent just reviewing definitions. So as a campus, it was on one of our college learning days, getting into small groups and talking about, as an institution, how do we define equity? How do we look at something like implicit bias. What do those things mean? We looked at definitions that were put forth by various organizations and sort of decided as a campus what this means to us. So these are some of the things on a broader level, ways that our college has engaged in this work. So this brings us to equity and continuous improvement. And one of the ways that our president has challenged us in the coming year to integrate this work into our work on the department level is that she's challenged us to have all of our annual planning focused on equity. So at our institution, each year we engage in something called the Plan, Improve, Evaluate process. This is our college's annual planning process. And so every April, every department submits at least one PI plan, we call them PIs, to look at which things in our department we want to improve and which initiatives we are going to undertake to further our strategic goals and strategic plan of the college. And then we report on the results 18 months later, the following October. And within these plans, we identify what our current status is, we establish a baseline, and then we set our objective, what our goal is, and then we ask departments to design measurements based on our objective, and then how they'll conduct that measurement, how they'll know whether or not they've met their goal. And so every year, every department submits a plan, and they can be on pretty much anything, whatever the department is working on, just show that status and baseline and that measurement, how they plan to make those improvements. This coming year, our president has asked that at least one PI from each department be focused on equity. And so this is some of where our efforts come in, the Institutional Research and Planning Department, towards furthering that goal or assisting departments with being able to conduct that measurement and collect the data. We've created an equity dashboard, which Erin will be demonstrating in our presentation today. And along with that, conducting training on campus with deans and department chairs, showing the dashboards, what types of data they can pull from there. We're also working on an equity report. So this is separate from the dashboards and a report format that we hope to have released by the end of this semester. High-level summaries of various metrics from student enrollment, success metrics to after they graduate. We are utilizing templates from the USC Center for Race and Equity, and a couple of these examples we'll show on the next slide, but this is something that we want to have this resource as well as other resources and tools so that when we are providing the data to various groups on campus, they have a step-by-step guide or some templates so they know how to review the data. As you know, when you present this information to people, it can be quite overwhelming. There's a lot of different information. And as the creators of those dashboards or the curators of that data, we have to take into account how people can process that. And I think a lot of times we try to make sure we get a lot of things in there to meet different people's needs, but we also want to provide those resources to help people think through what they're looking at. And then the PI trainings. So these are trainings we do every year to help departments put together their plans for continuous improvement. So we'll continue to do this and tailor it to this new equity initiative. So these are a couple examples of those data templates that I mentioned that we've pulled directly from that USC Center for Race and Equity. On the left-hand side, a very basic step-by-step looking at instructor's course level data, but disaggregating that, looking at it by racial ethnic group, asking faculty members to pull together largest and smallest enrollments, then looking at course success rates, the overall course success rates, retention rates, other observations. Again, just a guide or a template for instructors or deans or chairs to use should they choose to use this. And then on the right is another example of a template from the Center for Race and Equity. It's calculating an equity index. And so this is something we've been having conversations about in our department is, how detailed do we get with these? We don't want to confuse people. Do we keep it more simple? And so So we're adapting the template on the left to include some other examples. You know, we're still talking about the template on the right, but just to give you a sense of some of the conversations we're having about the resources that we want to provide in addition to the dashboards. So with that, I'll turn it over to Aaron.
Okay, yeah, I had to make sure that window wasn't dropping down, but I had to make sure I unmuted myself. That's one piece I keep forgetting. So I'm going to jump out and reshare my screen here to the dashboards. So if everyone has seen some of our presentations in the past at the previous IAIRs, you know that we use Tableau as our main kind of dashboarding tool, but we also prepare the data from SAS. So most of our analysis comes in the coding of our variables, some of the, any kind of the jobs or reports that we run, all the programs start in SAS, and then that's where a lot of the background work comes. So most of the files become prepared in the way that we want them in Tableau. Not to say that we do some alias naming in Tableau where we're naming some of the variables, and I'll show you a couple of specific examples of that in our Tableau. But I wanted to start here just to show kind of where our stakeholders come to access some of this, some of the data that's more widely available to the campus community. But from this MV Connect site, which is our SharePoint page, we have our research and planning page with all of our separate links for some of the other data that we provide here on the left. Our data request tool, but we have this dashboards page. So this is all mostly Tableau dashboards now, and we're embedding the Tableau dashboards from public directly as thumbnails into our SharePoint site. So you can see the thumbnails here. We have a couple examples of those that are thumbnails, and then a limitation of SharePoint is that the thumbnails and the embedding only really work well in Chrome or in Firefox. Internet Explorer, when you click on these thumbnails, it would just open a blank page, but it will still have this navigation. So we've included this link to Tableau Public just for that reason. So in case people are in Internet Explorer and still want to use the dashboards, they can just go right into Public to use them there. But what I want to focus on is this equity dashboards for grades and equity dashboards for enrollment first. So I'm going to click into the enrollment. Our equity dashboards for enrollment, and I'm going to make this bigger, is we disaggregate all of the variables by the Pell Grants, veterans, disadvantaged status, disability, and first generation by both fiscal year and by term. And we do this using the codes that are available in our ICCB reports from the A1. So we are using the A1 as our source data to track the enrollments by these subpopulations. And that way, staying consistent with using that kind of static source of the A1, we know that we're comparing, populations that have been, the data has been cleaned and verified and kind of looked at a little bit more than running, just end of term enrollments from each individual term or anything like that. So we're comparing our populations to that A1 data. But this is kind of what it looks like for the enrollment right now. We do it by all these terms where you can see here, but we also offer a button up here towards the top because we found it that people, they want to jump back and forth between a particular variable more often. So under every variable, there's a button to take them back to the term, which when you click here, it'll load for a second, but take you to that same Pell status by fiscal year instead, or by term, and then to jump back to fiscal year. So they can jump back and forth just by a click of a button versus going across the top to the tabs. But then we're coding, so we're using the alias feature, and in the A1 these are 0, 0, 1, 2, and then we're just naming them kind of more friendly names for our stakeholders to use. And then the filters are all aligned on that right-hand side. So in the fiscal year view, we allow a single select by fiscal year, what fiscal year it is. Then you can filter by gender, course subject. So if you wanted to go down to a course subject level, and then the course itself here. And then we do a cross analysis by those other subpopulations. And realizing that some of these can get very small, on Tableau Public, there is a limit of how far down it would be able to show. So if you got down to, I think, less than 10, if that's right, that might not be the number, less than 4, then, yeah, 4, then it won't show. So we do have that limiter on there, just even from some of these things that we've been working on. But that's always kind of one of the key discussions in our office, and we've started having weekly and bi-weekly, just depending on what's going on, dashboard discussions where, all of us will meet and just discuss, what are the next steps, how's everything going, because we're getting a lot of requests to get kind of more data in the hands of these stakeholders, but we want to make sure that we're putting the data out there in the right kind of format that's digestible, one, but also secure. So this is one that's out on MBA Connect and in public for, because it's aggregated up to this course level. So nothing can be really disaggregated down and identified with those limits on it. But we think once we hover over these two, you get the percentage and the number of students, but we also wanted to supply the crosstab, because as you get into a certain, so let's say, first generations, oh, click the wrong. I'm going to click out first generation student for the download and the digesting of this to our kind of stakeholders. We've also stopped the download so that they can see, how many Pell recipients are first generation status. So when they download that, you'll get just the image, PDF, or PowerPoint ability. You won't be able to download the individual datas or crosstab as just one of those security features. And when they go, to PowerPoint, this will, as I think many people know, you get the general format of what the dashboard looks like, but also what filters were selected. And this is just kind of a plain example, but I wanted to say that. So I'm going to jump through these tabs quick just to show kind of what this all looks like. But this is the Pell Grants, then jumping over to the veterans by fiscal year, it would just be all the veterans across the campus. But these 4 to do the cross analysis are different. So, remove the veteran status because these are shown here and just insert the Pell. And then the same here, disadvantaged status. Same kind of thing, just switch these filters, but the same format will apply all the way throughout all 5 of these subpopulations for the enrollment. And then first generation. And a lot of what's being focused on is the trainings with our staff of how to go and navigate through these dashboards and how to use some of the data. Because I think even Dr. Baer stated in the very first session for the keynote here is the dashboards aren't solving the problem. It's more we're putting the data in the hands to identify some of these populations for the people. So training the people on some of the stakeholders and how to use the data is really what our main focus is in providing it in a way that they can use it in a very accessible format. So that's the equity dashboard for enrollment, but I want to take a second. I'm going to jump out of the equity dashboard for enrollment. Is there any questions or anything particular here related to the enrollment?
There are no questions in the chat, Aaron.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure to jump over here. That was one of the keys for the training too, is I wanted to make sure when Sadia was saying that there are a lot of discussions going on about definitions and using the right definitions, we want to make sure that we're supplying these definitions from the A1, because although we know them really well on what these populations are, we want to put that in. So we always focus here on the definitions of what these populations are showing. So when they're looking at a first generation student, when they're looking at disability status or Pell status, what the difference between the Pell eligible, that they're not having dollars dispersed, or a Pell recipient, and what the difference between those are when they're selecting those. And then we're also supplying the links towards the end to some of these other equity dashboards that I'm going to be pulling up and showing you. But we thought that was important too, that, you know, once they're here, maybe they're having trouble finding the other sources of information that they wanted. But I'm going to show you these individually, like the equity dashboard for grades is next. And then the graduates dashboard, you know, to look at the graduates, and that's one of the things with the USC templates that we're looking at is, you know, the graduates, the breakdown of the completions by race, ethnicity. And that's one of those things too. So if no questions, I'm going to jump to the equity dashboard for grades, and then we'll look there. Oh, that's taking me out here. I want to go back.
It goes into public.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm going to go here in the embedded one. And this is the equity dashboards for grades. So it starts with an extra 2 tabs that aren't in the enrollment, the grades by race, ethnicity, by fiscal year, and then by gender specifically. We felt that that was important to break out, especially for those templates. If you remember seeing, you know, it was looking at course success by specific race, ethnicity, by specific gender, but then it will also go into the subpopulations in the same exact format and layout as the enrollment, so that people are kind of used to that order of Pell status, veteran, disability, disadvantaged, and the first generation. And then it will repeat by you know, race, ethnicity, gender, and so on for the terms. But I wanted to go over the format for this because it is a little bit different than by enrollment. We put all the filters up across the top just because we're doing a side-by-side comparison for some of these course success rates. So you'll see a fiscal year 2019 to fiscal year 20 comparison. And that way you can see, once you start doing and selecting your variables, you know, if you go by a specific subject or go by a specific course, how that success by that population has changed at least 2 years, but you can always select another year. It just will start to get tighter. So as you can see, you know, you can throw in 2018 there. It's just going to squeeze these visuals a little bit smaller. But when you hover over them, you'll get the same kind of data that we're offering in enrollment. It's the total, you know, the percent followed by the number, because we always want the number of that population to be showing. That way they know when it starts, you know, when it starts to get smaller, you know, 74 students, you'll be able to know kind of what percentage you're talking about, since we're just showing the percentages here. But same kind of thing, we show the visuals in the middle here, underneath the filters where we do subject, course, and all 5 of these subpopulations, followed by the crosstab in the bottom. We do ABC rate, DFI rate, and a W rate. I know we've had several discussions about this, but we're also a member of NCCBP. So for our benchmarking purposes, we do a lot of comparisons with that, with using an ABC pass rate. And so we wanted to kind of match and try to get some consistency across some of these reports that we're putting out. So that way, if anybody's looking at a specific course, you know, pass rate or anything, we just wanted to make sure to cross that bridge and try to get everything along the same kind of lines. But I'm going to jump over to the grades by gender and show what that looks like. Same kind of thing, but now with grades by gender, since that throws in that extra element of the grades by gender, the race ethnicity filter was also added in. So that way you can do that cross analysis with gender by race ethnicity. You know, that just switched, you know, the gender filter was here. So it's just kind of showing it a little bit differently where the gender's here. And that way you can do whatever kind of analysis that you want. and then the Pell status, everything else will be very similar with race and gender then thrown in. And then it will continue through all the rest of these filters the rest of the way through term and by fiscal years. So any questions about that in terms of the Tableau public version? Okay, so the next level of this is what we want to talk about too. And I know this isn't, you know, this Tableau public, this is probably something everyone can do, especially since it is, you know, through public and using just A1 data. So these are both available through Tableau public, and that's our version of our handouts for today. Is if you want to see them and if you have any questions, you know, please go through Tableau public and just search Moraine Valley. You can look at the general format of what these are and play around with them, and let us know if you're trying to replicate something yourself and just are new to Tableau and would like any questions there. The next step I want to go to is our Tableau Online page. That's public. Tableau Online page, and explore some of those extra ones that we have here. So we do something very similar in Tableau Online, where through the equity dashboards, we have the same two on here, but what the difference is when you start clicking in. So our Tableau Online, we have the package deal that's the 2 creator licenses and 100 viewers. So we only have 100 viewers across campus with, you know, I think a little less than 2,000 staff. So really the Tableau Online is what's been designed to be the more secure level access to some of this data, where you can download, you know, the crosstab itself separately into Excel or a separate table. But what we want to mention here is, you notice that we stopped all the equity information in the earlier ones by the course level. And that was determined by, you know, several meetings with deans, with admin council, to kind of stop that public accessible aggregated data at the course level. But we allow these to go to the section level. So that way, if instructors or the dean, well, there's no instructors currently in here, but the deans, the assistant deans, the administrators, directors, if they wanted to be able to go and analyze by different kinds of course deliveries, the way we sort kind of our course offerings is by our section numbers. So like a certain range would be our online, not during this term, but our online sections, or our sections that are meeting during the day or during night or weekend or anything, is defined by our section numbers. So they'd have to know specific ranges that they want, but they can multi-select sections and be able to see, you know, Pell status, first generation students currently enrolled in online courses. You could do those by using these ranges. But that was determined so that, you know, it's more secure here, so that somebody can't go into a specific section of classes and find, you know, that would be a little bit more identifiable data. So that's why this is stopped here. But like I said, with the download, you're able to download still the crosstab. You know, I can download the Tableau workbook since I'm the admin here, but we still are limiting the data element. So you can't get the data behind the scenes. So we always keep that kind of locked down, especially still out here. And I want to jump, you know, out here through the equity dashboard for grades. It's the same kind of thing. So by grades, we allow these to go by the section level as well. And this comes up. So this is all the same kind of format as the prior ones that we were showing, but this allows for the section level analysis. So it gets to that next granular level of aggregating those numbers based on these other variables. So the last piece I want to show in Tableau Online, and then I want to open it up for kind of discussion of where everyone else is at in terms of working through some of their equity discussions and if they've had success in some of this work too. But also here, through our grade distributions, we have put out a course summary by race ethnicity. The difference here, we do have user-specific views on these where for specific departments that are only allowed to see the sections by their specific prefixes that they're in charge of, we do have that defined here. So depending on who's logging into Tableau Online, they can only see specific prefixes. But from here, we do change the layout where the course, delivery method, and then by race ethnicity. So this allows kind of that one extra level analysis where you can go and see, individually by the course, how students are doing. And this really gets down to that number of that secure level that we would not allow in Tableau Public, but is defined here to very specific people that have access to this. So, as an admin, I can see all of them, but for some people, they wouldn't even be able to see that this exists. As well as the crosstab down here below. Everyone always wants to export the crosstabs and work with the tables. So that's why we always feel like it's important to keep including these tables underneath and allowing the download for those crosstabs, because people just want that table format, even though it's in this visual kind of representation as well when you hover over and get the percentage and the number there. But then similar to our grade distributions in the equity focused dashboards, we do a term by term comparison. So you can see by a specific term, we always do 5 years worth of data, and these are updated once the term is over. So you're always able to kind of see and update and select whatever you want to look at for program review purposes, for anything else. But then you can do kind of a comparison. You see when those sections in that delivery were or were not offered, so you can't you know to compare or not. But also what delivery method they were taught in. So that way the success rates you're comparing against are, apples to apples. You're not comparing an online success rate versus a traditional or versus a hybrid. So that way those are kind of in line with each other. And you do notice in the spring 20 semester, we did a pass fail as I think many other colleges did, but that kind of is new, so that way when you're looking at spring 20, there'll be pass fails in there, so you'll see these extra columns where there's we did some pass fail options, and then you can filter by specific modalities here as well. So that way, if you only want to look at the traditional, if you only want to look at the online or hybrid dual credit courses, you can do that and compare the apples to apples pass rates. And then we do just the ABC view, where you can see strictly, the ABC rate compared to the DFWI rate, where we aggregate that DFWI all together with the percentage and numbers there, with the same kind of filters across term, race, gender, location, which is all of our different sites, delivery methods, the individual departments for some of those rules that we have in place, subject, course, and sections. And then the withdrawal rate, which is everything together versus just the withdrawals. As we recently did a withdrawal pilot of looking at certain improving withdrawal rates across campus. And then just by race ethnicity, which takes out that one granular level that you noticed in the beginning where it was doing that delivery. You can still filter by delivery, but it won't be aggregating those percentages in the middle here by the delivery. It's just course by race ethnicity, and then the tables and crosstabs there too. And then by gender, which is similar to this, just by the course by gender, and then the total. Followed by those links to still take you to those other sources of information. But these since we're in online, these are sourcing to the other online sources that are helpful in to looking at more equity data as well. So is there any questions? I haven't seen any come across the chat.
Yeah, thank
Sadia, Dan, anything else you can think of to jump into?
Well, you'll notice in the grades one that we always put that disclaimer for interpretations of descriptive data with respect to a certain ethnicity, because with it, that bullet four is for total grades. And you'll occasionally get like courses where there was just one African American person, one Native American, or one Hawaiian Pacific Islander. And that's what the disclaimer is for, because that those kind of interpretations should be made with caution, given the sample sizes for various ethnicities and various courses where there's just a total of 5 grades, where it's 5 grades or 50 grades. So
yeah, and I know in the recent work with the CNLA, with Perkins funding and some of this other work with ILEA, obviously is one of the big drivers for providing this data out, and with the upcoming PI being all focused around ethnicity work, closing equity gaps in some of these programs, specific departments focusing on this. So this all kind of started most of this work in just kind of focusing in on our efforts on supplying the data in the right way. But I know I've been mentioning the awards by ethnicity for graduates, so I just wanted to show this too. This is what our tab is for the awards by ethnicity right now in one of our formats. We also do this in many other formats. We still publish our fact book every year, which breaks down our graduates by every different program and award level, by race, ethnicity, gender, and those are in our published fact book every year too. But I wanted to pull this up. This has the filters by race, ethnicity, our fiscal years, which go all the way back to when Moraine Valley started, gender, the awards, and the majors. So they could filter all the majors across all time by race, ethnicity.
Thanks, Aaron, and thank you, Dan, for your comment. I'm curious to hear from people on this chat about any efforts on your institutions regarding this work, or similar sorts of things you've developed and the successes related to those, or challenges even. I know I see some people here who I know are part of that ILEA initiative as well.
Well, I'll make a comment from COD, if you don't mind me jumping in. We kind of focus on the, since we're a academic pathways institution, we're sort of, and really our equity initiative is really embedded within the pathways initiative. So we actually built a lot of these, or split the ethnicity of these metrics affiliated with the AACC metrics. So more of the longer term metrics. So that's how we get involved. And we also use Tableau, so I'm very intrigued. These are very nicely laid out. I noticed you use Tableau Public, and then this is Tableau Online. We use exclusively Tableau Online because, correct me if I'm wrong, Public, anyone really can get access to it and can, but you are using the A1, which is kind of public information, right?
yes, we are. And by the way, for the equity enrollments dashboard, those numbers are end of term, not census. So.
Okay, and most of the data sources is from the A1. You mentioned, Aaron.
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
Public,
yeah,
but online, although the most recent, the completion data, is that also, you're grabbing different sources for that?
Yeah, that's just running all graduates.
Yeah.
So that's not looking just at the completions through the A1,
yeah.
Or the A2, but. Anybody else also kind of working towards this? What you're, working on?
Sure. This is Ron Serio from Harper. So we have a number of dashboards that we've created to try to help divisions and departments, analyze their own students and take a look at their own populations and see where they have gaps. One difficulty we started to run into is divisions being like, this is great. We don't have time to actually look through this. Can you look through everything and tell us where the gaps actually are? So it's a bit of a, you want to give them the tools to be able to do it themselves, but then you don't always get that buy-in, or, I'm sure they want to, but no one ever feels like they have the time to really properly dig in. So a bit of a challenge there to figure out, okay, now that we have the tools, who actually does the work?
That's a good point, Ron. Thanks for bringing that up. And of course, we have that challenge as well, even aside from these equity dashboards, with dashboards in general. We'll get requests through our data request system that we know people can so easily go to the portal page and pull that information up through the self-service dashboards. But I think in terms of the specific equity work, we're really trying to focus on doing those trainings and having those conversations, relying on the deans to also put that messaging forward to their chairs to be a little more independent, to be able to have these conversations and pull up the information that is relevant to them. The templates that we're working on creating, so it's a step-by-step sort of process and they can discuss it as a group. As I mentioned, our president has challenged the college to have equity-related plans, annual plans for every department. And those are conversations that generally people engage in at the beginning of the semester in February at their department meetings. So that's our hope, is that we're getting on people's agendas prior to that to walk them through. And we have a data usage team on campus. I forgot to mention this earlier. That's also been a really great resource. So it's made up of Aaron and myself, people from our assessment office, institutional effectiveness, deans from different areas. And so those people, that group has really championed this work as well, to get this information out, as well as doing the training and serving as resources for people to understand the data better and how they can use it in their work.
And I also like to mention, I know Dan brought up.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to ask one more. How are you rolling out? You mentioned you have, and we have the same package, the 100 user licenses. How are you controlling that rollout? I think I heard you, only the deans have access at this point to the Tableau online. Is there pent-up demand? Is the word leaking out are you creating more of a demand, and are people lining up to access these? And then what's your process for rolling out those licenses?
Yeah. Do you want to talk, Sadi, or you want me to?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So like the most recent, so we just did a training with the chairs. So we went and met with all the faculty chairs, and that's what I was kind of saying, like, oh, no faculty have access to it yet. The chairs will be getting, after that training, which happened like a week, I think week 2 ago, they will be getting access to it. We made these equity dashboards with a lot of, them in mind, and working with them of what they wanted access to, what they wanted to be able to see readily in preparation for some of this, of some of this process improvement through the PIEs, and what they would need for their, their program review, stuff like that. So they will be getting access to that. But yeah, we're still trying to stay, underneath that 100 license. But we want as many people to have it as possible. So the chairs were like our next, best fit for faculty getting access to some of this more secure level data, because they're the ones working on completing the program reviews, some of these grants anyways. So yeah.
Okay, CL Turner has a question from the chat. How did you determine the data points to include?
The data points to include. I think that mostly came around kind of our meetings, right? Like with the three of us, we were just mostly, seeing what fit the best for right now. there's so many, as I'm sure everyone here probably is familiar with, there's so many different elements in the A1 that we just wanted to supply enough that they could focus in on some of these specific things that seem to be popping up the most. And like we were working with the CNLA, these were some of the populations that they wanted the most when looking at these career enrollments and completions and grade and course successes in some of these career specific ones, but we're getting it a lot in some of the other requests too. So those are why we kind of narrowed in on those populations. Not to say that we won't add more in the future, but those were the ones we wanted first.
Right, and in terms of those outcomes data too, I think those were things that we had generally, as Aaron mentioned, we've been sharing those in our fact book and through other means historically, and as part of our participation in the IAIR initiative, it's very clear that we're focused on those completion rates and those persistence rates. So some of what we're providing is in line with those types of things, and then really what instructors, chairs, and deans can be doing within their areas, focused on grade success rates, withdrawal rates, and things like that. And our assessment office is also working with those areas. At our institution, those are two separate offices, but they're doing similar work in their areas. And I want to go back a little bit to Jim's question about some of the demand for this data. And as Aaron mentioned, we presented this to the chairs a couple of weeks ago, this information, and we have the public, we have the Tableau public as well as the online. The online has the more secure section level data. And actually after that meeting, they came back to us and said, we don't want this. We don't want responsibility for the section level data. These are our peers. We're able to then look at the grade distributions of other faculty members, and we don't feel comfortable having this access at this time. And so that was something that they came back to us, and we're very concerned about that. So it's still an ongoing conversation. We have a meeting with our academic deans in December, and so we want to continue this conversation about data stewardship, data access. This is what the chairs have said. What do you feel comfortable doing? Do you feel like then you want to go back and have responsibility to then say we have all of this and we'll distribute it as necessary or as people demand it from your areas? So still having those conversations.
Okay, two questions from Amy Smith. One, does ILIA provide some directives on which data elements to include? And second, do you report institutional data to ILIA, or is this primarily for internal use?
Do you want to talk about PDP?
Yeah. So we're one of the many that are doing the PDP submissions for the ILIA work. Some of these data elements are similar to what's included in there. It's not directly the same just because this is the A1 and those are different data elements for those submissions, but it gave us an idea like this, the ILIA work and with the PDP submissions, that was definitely something we used to determine just these 5 kind of subpopulations to kind of start pulling up and supplying that data a little bit more easily for some of the stakeholders. But yeah, most of our institutional data for ILIA is sent through those PDP submissions. And then we get a whole nother suite with the login to the clearinghouse of the dashboards through Tableau that they make for us there. But that's even more just that we use internally in our office, but we don't widely share those dashboards out either, if that helps. But what I was going to say too, I didn't want to gloss over, because this presentation was really focused on the equity dashboards specifically. We do also do, we do aggregate, and that's what Dan was kind of hinting at, through the census analysis dashboards and the retention dashboards. Last year or 2 years ago, our pies were all focused around improving retention. And so like we've had these retention dashboards made from fall to fall, fall to spring retention. And these also have, by ethnicity, of looking at, retention by ethnicity. So I didn't want to gloss over these but these are also out there too, so that, you know, it's just, we were focusing in on those subpopulations too. So I was just realizing I didn't want to gloss over these, but some of that work.
Any other
Anything else?
questions, comments?
Seal Turner once again. Do you also use these dashboards for program review? I believe we do, don't?
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead,
We
Sonia.
do and we don't. So
Yeah.
Well, some we do.
as you know, we
Depends
have,
on the dashboard, I guess.
yeah. So we have, you know, as you know, very specific, you know, requirements for the program review in terms of data that each program is required to submit every year. So our office has traditionally put together kind of like data workbooks where we'll post them to our internal portal for every program that's going through review that particular year, so they can easily access the data that they need, the specific data they need for program review. And then when we do the presentation to those program chairs, the programs that are going through review that year, we also direct them to our dashboards and our portal page for additional resources. So the specific data that program review asks for, we create in those templates, but additional data as needed through these dashboards and other reports, survey reports and things like that can be found on our portal page.
Angela, I want to know if we could share the link to the public's
Yes, I can
dashboards. Yes, it's
share that.
public. Yeah, it's basically it's public.tableau.com. Then you can search for Moraine Valley, or Aaron's going to send me a specific link. Yeah.
Yeah, if I can come back here. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I know, if you ever have any questions after the fact, even when just kind of come to see some of the logic of how we, you know, move some of this data from SAS over to Tableau, or even some of that behind the scenes stuff, if you have any kind of functional questions, you know, we're always here to kind of help one another out. So any questions, feel free to email any of us. And depending on what the question is, it might come to a specific person, but we'd be happy to help, you know, one way or another.
All right, thank you so much for your
Thank you, everyone.
Stop sharing.